Pulwana has shook the nation. And since yesterday, a lot of responses have been coming. The Prime Minister, Mr. Narendra Modi, made a statement, and this morning the Cabinet Committee on Security, chaired by the Prime Minister, met and decided to work internationally to isolate Pakistan and also put pressure. Meanwhile, the Prime Minister has, in a public meeting where he went to flag off the Vande Bharat Express, said that the people who have done this will have to pay a very heavy price. Sandeep, if you look at the responses that have coming in, India has received a lot of international support from almost every country in the world, including the United Nations. And then, of course, China was a little muted because they have condemned terrorism in its basic. And first and foremost, if you look at the response that the government of India has made, it looks like a very calibrated kind of a thing, because it talks of diplomacy. And of course, we obviously will not hear what is any other options.
You know, this is, as you said, this is a big scar on India's psyche, and this scar cannot go away so easily. And it's been just 24 hours since the incident took place, so I think the responses will be rolling out slowly and surely, and we'll see something taking shape in a few days for now. As for now, the responses from the international community, including the UN Secretary General, have been heartwarming. But we have to notice that among heads of states, very few heads of states of developed countries or rich countries have spoken. It is mostly our neighbors and the Russian president who have spoken. Otherwise, it's the foreign offices. So that gives a slight indication of what their priorities are. And when it comes to taking action, if you've noticed, whether it was the US in Afghanistan or Erdogan against the PKK rebels in Turkey, the action has to be initiated by the nation itself, while the nation seeks support from the others to fall in with what its tactics are going to be. So I believe that this international support is the first step, which means that the nations are with India, and most of them are saying that the perpetrators and the incubators, they need to be punished. So the code, if you decode it, it's very clear that the nations are with it, but the onus is entirely up to India, entirely up to us. And it's a lonely grind, as it has been for many countries, to really put a complete stop to all of this.
If you look at the domestic response, by and large, almost every political party has condemned it. And the Prime Minister, of course, this morning made an earnest appeal that while there could be genuine concerns and people can criticize the government, but at this point of time when the country is fighting a war against terror, we should address the world in one voice. And soon after, we heard the Congress president, flanked by the former Prime Minister Manmohan Singh and former Defence Minister A.K. Antony, tell that they're solidly with the government in this response and this fight against terror. We stand behind, and of course express their grief for the killings and the martyrs that happened in Jammu and Kashmir. By and large, the political class has shown a different kind of response. I mean, they have been one with the government. One voice is kind of emerging. Of course, there have been sporadic protests in parts of the country against the anger. And the Prime Minister did talk of the seething anger in the country and also mentioning it. Those are the options that obviously, as you said, could be rolled on, because people are referring to the last Uri response. The surgical strikes happened almost 10-11 days after the main incident, so people have some kind of a template to look at. But while not getting into the other options, if you look at India and Pakistan, we just reports that the Indian High Commissioner is being called for consultations, if one may say so. And India has already issued a démarche by calling the Pakistan High Commissioner. The Foreign Secretary called him to the South Block this morning and rejected the statement Pakistan made last night. So how do we read that?
Yes, actually, again, Pakistan, if you notice, the statement came very, very late at night, almost after all the newspapers had gone to bed. And it was a conditional statement. It never condemned the Pulwana as such. It said it condemned all acts of violence in the valley. So there is a certain amount of obfuscation. And as we saw with the 2008 Bombay attacks, maybe they will try it, they will pretend to be very willing and sympathetic for the first fortnight or so. But when the real time for the real action against such people come, we see that Pakistan really hasn't risen to the occasion on any of the previous times, if you remember.
Sandeep, one more interesting aspect of this China. I mentioned Chinese Foreign Office have made a statement once again condemning terrorism as an act. And of course, if you look at the Shanghai Cooperation, China and India and many other countries who are part of SCO, there is a pact for fighting terrorism. But today the response doesn't talk about the JEM, the Jaish-e-Mohammed, what exactly is they're talking about. Because India today, the foreign, after the meeting of the Cabinet Committee of Security, briefing the media, the Finance Minister, Mr. Arun Jaitley, did mention the fact that 1267 resolution, that's something which has been, that of course, I'm sorry, not the 1267, he mentioned that the comprehensive, the definition of terrorism, the Convention on Terrorism, which has been pending. So India will kind of push it. But the Chinese statement refers to the 1267 resolution. So where do we find a way out?
You see, as far as India's comprehensive convention on international terrorism is concerned, it's a dead duck in water, because there's hardly any country which does not incubate militants. Name a country and I'll name a militant organization. So really, while other countries offer lip service of supporting India's CCIT, they don't really back it as such, and that is why it has been lying in the United Nations for a number of years, just like the Rajiv Gandhi Disarmament Plan of 1988. And we do not have really too much of hopes on this.
And how about China, particularly in support of JEM and Masood Azhar, because that's something India has been talking, and there's again, surely when you talk of raising the stakes, putting international pressure on Pakistan and isolate Pakistan on international fora.
The elephant in China's room is actually the China-Pakistan economic corridor and the dual-use Gwadar port they're planning to remove their dependence on the vulnerable Malacca Straits, where India and the US can choke them anytime. So that is why they will have to go soft and sweet on Pakistan, and which they are doing now. Normally people say that Pakistan would be walking into a debt trap, Pakistan would be beholden to China, but it is also the other way around, where China really cannot arm twist Pakistan up to a certain degree.
Well, before we sign off, one thing if you can decode for our readers, India did announce that it is going to withdraw or has withdrawn the most favored nation trade status on Pakistan. How would that translate in real terms?
In real terms, that is empty, but it is also symbolic. Because we hardly have any diplomatic bread with Pakistan, and these are
the trade itself is very low.
Very low. So this is largely symbolic. It is sending a signal to Mr. Imran Khan, and it is all up to Mr. Imran Khan and the army to decide what course they are planning in the future, whether it's going to be gun-wielding men bred on a certain ideology, or is it going to be what normal nations do across the table?
Well, as we go along, and prayers for the families of those who have lost their lives and for everything that happened, and international condemnation has already started pouring in. The nation is in there's a somber mood in the country. And on this, we end this Facebook chat, thanking my cameraman Manas Ranjan for helping us with the video. Thank you, Sandeep.
Thank you so much.